Here's some considerations for email migration. Hey everyone, Alex Moen here with today's BizTech tips. And when moving business emails from one provider to another, there are a handful of things you have to take into consideration, both small and large, because it can be bigger and more complex than you think there too. So right off the bat, if you're moving to use a completely different email address, maybe you're using an at gmail.com and you're now moving to at abc.com or whatever it might be, you have to consider that your email is on a whole bunch of different websites and platforms and in customers and vendors' hands, and you don't necessarily want to lose them. So if your previous email address can still be maintained for free or very inexpensively, it might make sense to set up forwarding rules to your new email address. Now, email hosting, it's a pretty major concern. So if you're switching from one to another, this is where things get pretty tricky. So of course you want to make sure that all your previous emails weren't lost. Probably makes sense to archive a certain amount or maybe even all of them. But oftentimes you'll have to make sure that those emails are transferred over properly because you don't want any problems or missed information or anything like that. So other things you need to consider, like what are the accessibility configurations, different file and folders and things going on there. What's the directory and data that needs to be sorted out? Influencing factors for how deep of a project this might be includes everything from the data source, the data type and density, just the migration server, the migration engine, other hardware on your network, and where you're migrating to. Those are all pretty big considerations. And the time it takes for this can vary hugely. So the rough numbers I'll give you are from Microsoft or Microsoft 365 or Office 365. But the truth of the matter is this is pretty similar across the board in terms of it can be really easy or it can take forever. So some things there, it can literally take months if where it starts to really ramp up is if you're transferring 10 or more gigabytes of data per mailbox. If there are multiple offices or geographies that have to be considered, that can really kick up the time. And of course, the number of mailboxes is part of it, but unless you're a larger enterprise with 1,000 or more, that's not necessarily a bottlenecking feature as much as all the other things I've kind of mentioned before this. So one thing to kind of consider there also, delays on your end. You have to consider what's your network capacity and network stability because all of this will actually come into play too. And of course, general skill and expertise of your IT people. And if you're using certain tools can really save a boatload of time there also, and the investment in it makes sense. But all in all, hopefully this just gave you the impression that this might be more complicated than it is, so really consider it carefully when you're doing it. Let me know if you have any questions, and have a good one, everyone.